Good morning. Our gathering music video was All You Need Is Love, a compilation of singing this song in about 161 countries in support of AIDS, well, the fight against AIDS. The song was released by the Beatles as a non-album single in July 1967. It was written by John Lennon, and the song was Britain's contribution to Our World, the very first live global television link. It was broadcast via satellite way back when and seen by an audience of over 400 people in 25 countries, which was a huge deal. Again, we're talking 1967. Lennon's lyrics were deliberately simplistic to allow for the show's international audience. In a statement to Melody Maker magazine, Brian Epstein, the Beatles manager, said, "All You Need Is Love" is an inspired song, and the band really wanted to give the world a message. And it's a clear message saying that love is everything. Oh, good. Paul's coming in. Welcome to all. My name is Rachel Daniels. I'm your worship associate today, and we're here with another hybrid service, both in person and by Zoom. Each Sunday, it's a community effort. We have the skilled tech work and sound balance from Don and Pam. Beautiful live music comes from Carole, our music director. Lit candles, hot coffee, cookies, and maintained sanctuary are brought to you by Paul and Candy. Scheduling speakers, juggling availability is done graciously and masterfully by Kendra. Cindy Williams posts on Facebook, and Kendra posts on other social media. It really is a huge team effort. The board and worship committee keep the fellowship together. And then, of course, there's all of you guys here too joining us. And we thank you for being here and for supporting our fellowship, both on Zoom and in person. And just as a reminder, there's a congressional meeting after today's service. And of course, we'll end prior to the Super Bowl starting. And 3:30, I think. Anyway, we have a slide. And I know, I think Emmeline is as into the Super Bowl as I am, because Emmeline asked, so who's playing again? Anyway, we have a slide up that Donald put up that shows our upcoming services. And let's see, we do have Reverend Raina next week. And of course, I can't really read it. So after Reverend Raina, who do we have, Pam? Oh, social justice and public watchdogs. And they'll be talking about where we're at in San Onofre, what's going on with the nuclear storage, nuclear waste storage, and other issues around San Onofre, the closed down nuclear power plant. And then after that, we have, okay, Kanae Perkins, okay, who's a, sorry, I can't read them from here. I guess I'm starting to need glasses. But anyway, you can see the schedule on your screens, and I think those in the sanctuary can read who's coming up. I am elated to have our returning guest speaker, Emmeline Cordingley, with us here today. And Emmeline will be speaking to us on Music of the Spheres, celebrating harmony and dissonance in relationships. Using the analogy of music of the spheres, Emmeline will explore with us the impacts that bell hooks' definition of love as an action, not a passive feeling, has on relationships in our lives. Most of us know Emmeline is a Master of Divinity student at the Starr King School for the Ministry in Oakland. They are studying to become an interfaith chaplain. We have been so moved by each service Emmeline has given that many members of the congregation requested that Emmeline be a returning guest speaker as often as scheduling allows. I'm excited to be the worship associate today for Emmeline. Their services are so intriguing and bring together so many aspects of current events and just life in general. For example, today's service, on Love is in Action, which also we went into a little bit last week with Reverend Tom. Emmeline brings up Bell Hooks. Bell Hooks is an African-American author of over 40 books, was a professor at Yale and Stanford, and an important figure in exposing the systems of oppression through her work. And I'm sorry to say I'd never heard of Bell Hooks until Emmeline. Sadly, Bell Hooks died just a couple months ago, and I love that this service is during Black History Month, and with Valentine's Day tomorrow, explores Love is in Action. I look forward to learning about music of the spheres and what it means to celebrate both harmony and dissonance in relationships. And when I look at which of our principles maybe this most relates to, probably our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and love is an action in all our relationships. For those on Zoom, the order of service was sent to you in the email notice that went out today at around 10. Usually it goes out at around 9, but it went out at 10 today. And for those of you here, we have copies in the back of the room. And if you have a silent joy and sorrow and you're here in the fellowship, we have candles over there that you're welcome to light. And we'll have our spoken joys and sorrows later on in the service. Emmeline will stay around for a few moments after our service to answer any questions before we start our congregational meeting. Anywhere on Sunday mornings, Unitarians light the chalice. If you have a candle at home close by, we invite you to light it now. And Emmeline will light our chalice here as I read our chalice lighting words from Reverend Andrew Pakula. As we light this chalice, come into this circle of community. Come into this sacred space. Be not tentative. Bring your whole self. Bring the joy that makes your heart sing. Bring your kindness and your compassion. Bring also your sorrow, your pain. Bring your brokenness and your disappointments. Spirit of love and mystery, help us to recognize the spark of the divine that resides within each of us. May we know the joy of wholeness, and may we know the joy of being together. And for our centering thought, I selected it thinking about the relationship with ourselves, since we're celebrating harmony and dissonance in relationships. I thought, how interesting that this particular centering thought, which they attribute to Buddha. And so if you can, unmute yourselves. And here in the sanctuary, we'll read it out loud from the screens. So with you unmuted and reading all together. You yourself, as much as
anybody
entire universe,
in the entire verse
deserves
your
love and affection.
Now we'll turn to our music director, Carole, for our opening hymn, number 18. It's in the gray hymnal, What Wondrous Love. And please sing along at home. Words will be in chat. And if you're here in the sanctuary, grab a gray hymnal.
Good morning, everyone. We are singing What Wondrous Love, which we haven't done for a while. So I'm going to play it through first quickly, and then we'll all sing it together. Okay? What wondrous love is this, oh my soul, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this, that brings my heart such bliss. takes away the pain of my soul, and takes away the pain of my soul. When I was sinking down, sinking down, sinking down. When I was sinking down, sinking down. When I was sinking down beneath my sorrow's ground, friends to be gathered round, oh my soul, friends to be gathered round, oh my soul. To loved and to all friends I will sing, I will sing. To love and to all friends I will sing. To love and to all friends who came in sorrow then, with thanks unto the end, I will sing, I will sing. With thanks unto the end, I will sing.
Good morning, everyone, and everyone on Zoom. Hello, hello. Wow, what a delight. Today's call to worship is a poem called Music of the Spheres by Robert Morgan. The first music we don't hear but know is inner, the rings around atoms singing, the bright levels in matter revealed by colors, through spectrum scales all up and down, the quantum ladder in fireworks of the inner horizons, each zone voicing its wavelength with choirs in the tiny stadiums of harmony of the deeper galaxies, ancient octaves and intervals, lit cities within every speck of substance. Back to you.
Thank you, Emily. It was beautiful. Okay, now together we're going to remind ourselves why we come together as a community. This is our Unison Affirmation. Please read the words on the screen. And those of you at home, please unmute and we'll read together. Love
Love
is
is
the
the spirit of
fellowship
and service
service
is
is all.
this
This is
our
Our
great
great covenant,
to dwell
together in
peace,
peace,
to
to
seek
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 truth in
truth
love,
and love,
love
and to
and
help
to help
one another.
one
one
another.
another.
Now we're going to pause our recording and we're going to have our spoken joys and sorrows. Now we'll start our recording again. And just know that our hearts are with you. For those that didn't voice a joy or sorrow, we share what's ever on your heart. And now we go to a reading by Emily.
Today's reading is an excerpt from Bell Hook's book, All About Love, New Visions. She writes, "Imagine how much easier it would be for us to learn how to love if we began with a shared definition. The word love is most often defined as a noun, yet all the more astute theorists of love acknowledge that we would all love better if we used it as a verb. I spent years searching for a meaningful definition of the word love and was deeply relieved when I found one in psychiatrist M. Scott Peck's classic self-help book, The Road Less Traveled. Echoing the work of Erich Fromm, he defines love as the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. Explaining further, he continues, love is as love does. Love is an act of will, namely both an intention and an action. Will also implies choice. We do not have to love, we choose to love. Now back to Rachel.
That was good, Emmeline. Thank you. Now, there are many ways to love this fellowship. And one of the ways is through your financial support. And I don't know about you guys, but we got a letter that Candy mailed out on how much we've given. And we thought, wow, we got to send in more money. But Carole will be playing as Candy passes the basket here. And then we have a slide up that shows ways you're able to contribute, either through PayPal or Tidly, and or mail in your checks. Thank you, Carole. Thank you, Carole. And now we will sing together, and we'll sing to each other. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, from this we live. And if you're here in the fellowship, feel free to stand up if you can as we sing to each other. And the words will be on the screen.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this
We are you, I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
So for our meditation time, I brought to share with you all some celestial music. So what we will hear momentarily is the sound of the solar system called K2-138. Might be K3-138. Maybe I wrote it wrong. We will find out. The motion of each of its planets has been converted into musical notes and rhythms. So it makes this kind of universal music. So let's have a moment to take in these sounds, to enjoy the rhythms of the universe and the rhythms of our own body. All right, hello. Hello, good morning again. Hello, wow. Oh my goodness, so wonderful to hear a hello. Happy almost Valentine's Day, etc. As Rachel said, I want to speak today about love in all our different relationships, but start with this idea of the music of the spheres. And I first happened upon this phrase a few months ago in a book mentioned without any context or definition, but the phrasing, this whimsical, mysterious phrasing, music of the spheres, really caught my imagination. And I imagined two orbs of light kind of emitting these ethereal musical overtones that would blend and mingle and create harmonies as they spiraled around each other. And when I finally researched the term, it turns out I wasn't terribly far off. So the music of the spheres refers to the Pythagorean idea, like Pythagoras' theorem, that as planets move on their orbital paths, they send vibrations through space which interact with the vibrations radiating from other planetary bodies. And as the reverberations mingle, they create a complex sound, a hum, that backgrounds our whole universe. And Pythagoras spoke about this idea sometime in the early 500s before the Common Era, mapping as best as he could the 7 known planets at the time and creating a musical scale based on their distance from one another and the speed of their movements as giant objects in space. And Pythagoras believed that this music of the spheres suffused the whole universe, inaudible to us because we had never not heard it, in the same way that you don't notice the hum of your refrigerator until it clicks off. And this phrase, music of the spheres, comes from something he supposedly said. There is geometry in the humming of the strings. There is music in the spacing of the spheres. Well, Pythagoras wasn't exactly right, but he wasn't exactly wrong either. And he was correct that mathematical ratios can explain the harmony of certain musical intervals. He noticed that when you pluck a string, which sounds a tone, then another string twice the length of that first one, a 1-to-2 ratio, the notes that the two emit resonate at a perfect octave, a pleasant sound. And other ratios led to unpleasant or dissonant intervals between two notes. So modern day astrophysicist Matt Russo explains that planetary bodies do indeed create vibrations that can be thought of as musical. And like Pythagoras' ratios between musical tones, the orbit of each planet within a given solar system can be expressed in a series of ratios relative to its neighbor planets. So in the solar system chain TRAPPIST-1, for example, the ratios are very simple and relatively harmonious. They call it a resonant chain. And as we follow the chain from the outermost planet to the innermost, the planets complete their orbits faster. For example, for every 2 orbits the outermost planet is completing, the next planet inside is completing 3, so moving slightly faster. And that's a ratio of 2 to 3. These differences in speeds can all be expressed in rhythms, which in turn can be sped up and brought into human hearing range to produce musical pitches. So the movements of planets in relation to one another can be understood as music, which is what we listen to during our meditation, a different solar system. And this music doesn't exactly background the whole universe like Pythagoras thought. It's more like a musical interpretation of mathematics of celestial movement. And it's certainly not always harmonious. The sheer size of most solar systems mean that they contain dissonant or unsettling intervals as well. But the ratios between just 2 adjacent planets are more likely to produce pleasing overtones. And it got me thinking about bodies and space, particularly earthly bodies and the space of our lives. And how do our own orbits and reverberations, our own actions, create harmonious or disharmonious music with others in our lives? And I think the answer lies in Bell Hook's definition of love. So in her book, again, All About Love, New Visions, she disrupts this idea of love as just a passive emotional state that you fall in or out of. She writes that love is above all a series of actions. To truly love, she says, we must learn to mix various ingredients: care, affection, recognition, respect, commitment and trust, as well as honest and open communication. And when I first read this, it directly challenged my own media-informed kind of view of love. And the love we see most often portrayed in film and TV, which then becomes very normalized, is a love that's very narrow and largely denies any agency to the people involved. It depicts romantic love as being the most desirable type of relationship, and it rarely involves honest communication between two people. In challenge to these representations of love, Hooks offers these ingredients as actions to practice and to aspire to. She says that without all of these elements, we're not doing true love. And doing is the operative word here, because her definition gives us back our active agency. It makes love into a verb, a practice at which we can improve, not just a passive state. And it expands love to mean any kind, including platonic and familial love. And as we learn these elements, mixing them into various melodies, we become aware of how the music of love and the music of all of our actions fills our lives. And nothing so far in my life has taught me more about the musical mechanics of two people attempting to relate than my relationship with my very dear friend and my roommate, Natasha, who might be on Zoom, but I'm not sure. So I moved in with Natasha a little more than a year ago, and living with someone, as most of you maybe know, teaches you a lot about them and a lot about yourself very quickly. So it didn't take long to realize that we are very different people and have very different established ways of doing things. For example, Natasha loads a dishwasher wrong. So I don't make the rules except that one because she is wrong. But beyond our cleaning squabbles, we also realize that we communicate very differently. And it was a difficult adjustment to shift from our casual friendship, kind of getting coffee once a week, to live-in roommates. I became very aware that I can become quite passive aggressive and distant when I feel uncomfortable expressing my needs and wants, when the vulnerability that expression requires is too daunting, and there isn't enough trust built up in the relationship to hold a space that feels safe for that. So after a very pleasant friendship, the music of our orbiting spheres became very discordant. And as our physical space had changed, so had the waves rippling out in between us. The ways we used to relate, the music we used to rely on was no longer good enough. And here's where Hook's 7 elements of loving action came into play. All our actions have reverberations, and I could have chosen to further distance myself from Natasha, feeling threatened by the vulnerability of emotional intimacy, and probably would have ruined our friendship forever. But although I wasn't yet able to act on all the elements of love reliably and skillfully in our friendship, I had just enough faith in our friendship and just enough respect for Natasha that I was willing to extend myself just a little into that vulnerable place and share with her a problem I was having at the time between us. And she responded so beautifully with respect and care and recognition of how hard it was for me in that moment to open up to her. And by the grace of her responding to me with actions of love, by playing those notes out into the air between us, our relationship strengthened instead of started to wither away. And like the circling planets change in tune by just the slightest shift in their rotations, sometimes all it takes is a single melodious note to set off a harmonious shift. In this way, relationships are mutual improvisations. By playing my one little weak note and sending it in her direction, she could choose to sing back to me sweet notes in harmony. And through this slow practice of starting with just 3 of those actions of love, commitment to our friendship, respect, and communication, our relationship started to change for the better. And I learned that through dissonance, that unsettling, unpleasant sound of 2 notes reverberating at odds with each other, comes growth. I learned that embracing the temporary discomfort of that tension and disharmony can be expansive and can actually bridge distances, even when it seems that allowing for conflict will send us spinning further apart than ever before. And this is a natural law of music as well. Consonant harmonies are made sweeter and richer by occasional dissonance. The lesson of love and dissonance is, again, not one we're often explicitly taught. Again, films show us an ideal of romantic love in which couples never fight, or if they do, it's only before they realize they're meant to be together or just before they divorce. And then usually still the movie ends with the happily ever after. And forget about portrayals of friends moving through conflict or family members compassionately broaching relationship problems between them. But even within our closest relationships, there will always be dissonant notes, disagreements, differences of opinion, misunderstandings, resentments that need to be aired out. I've read, and maybe those of you in long-term romantic relationships can attest to this, that the most content married couples actually have a few unresolved arguments that they orbit around for years. So a loving dissonance is profoundly normal, even healthy, and fits within these elements of love because it is a portal to deeper trust, recognition, and care, among other things. In sharing my true feelings and needs, I am allowing others the opportunity to love me better. Natasha is probably always going to load the dishwasher wrong. I have realized that I can let that sour note expand with the fuel of other unspoken resentments into a rumbling that can wreck a relationship. Or I can glide through it, recognizing that this little dissonance just adds richness to the music of our spheres, is even a source of affection, teasing her about how horribly inefficient her dish placement is. And I continue to sound the notes of love through recognizing and accepting Natasha for who she is, appropriately communicating my needs or frustrations as they arise, and listening to hers, trusting her to receive me with care, acting on our mutual commitment to do our best to love one another. So Hook's ingredients of love give us language and tools with which to understand and use our agency, to better hear and tune the music of our lives. And like the sudden awareness that comes with the refrigerator shutting off, the hum we didn't realize was surrounding us, maybe irritating us, it also awakens us to the music in our lives that doesn't sound very sweet. People with whom I, for example, have a dysfunctional or an unpleasant or even a harmful relationship. And it empowers me to realize that not everyone is equipped to love me well, and I am not equipped to love everyone well either. And there isn't shame in recognizing that. I don't believe that we're made to be in deep, vulnerable relationship with every person, especially when that vulnerability actually puts us in harm's way. Dissonance that pervades and persists is often a marker of abuse. And this distinction is very significant. There's the dissonance, loving dissonance, an important feature of healthy relationships, but pervasive discord is usually a sign of harm being done, a signal to distance ourselves from that person and perhaps love them from afar, set firm boundaries, or even end the relationship. And discerning between these dissonances is key and is strengthened by the practice of self-love. All of Hook's elements of love can also be turned inward, can be practiced as self-love, and can look like self-care, self-respect, and self-trust. It's an action of both love for others and love for myself to communicate my needs and feelings. For me, for example, alone time in nature is a very important self-care practice. Making time for this, I get back in touch with my intuition and creativity, and I unwind, which cleans out the space I use to offer love to others. I retune my instrument, renewing my ability to harmonize with others. Self-love both makes us more skillful at loving and reminds us that included in the effort of loving others is our duty to love ourselves. As I train myself to learn the various actions of love, I'm also training myself to notice which harmonies sound sweetest to me. In which of my relationships do I feel well loved? Natasha is a person in my life who loves me very well. She sees my many flaws, and while she does hold me accountable and support my growth, she doesn't judge me. She accepts me. And that is the sweetest harmony I've ever heard. And being able to hear it means I can ask for it in my other relationships too, as well as learn to practice it myself. In this way, as we learn to recognize being loved, we are simultaneously understanding how to be more loving ourselves. Care, affection, recognition, respect, commitment, trust, and honest and open communication. These are all notes waiting to be played into a symphony. I think about the planets beyond us, passing us in their own orbit, each wobbling and spinning and vibrating with different tones, which fly out into space, creating a music of the universe. And us too on Earth, following our unique paths through life, our actions resonating with sound, tuning our own instruments and listening for euphonic responses. Claiming our agency, seeing and respecting others in their wholeness, and discerning those harmonies that signal true love is how we embody the actions of love and celebrate the music of the spheres. So this Valentine's Day, may we all celebrate the love in our lives, its rich melodies, its sweetness, and its dissonance. Blessed be.
That was great. Not only for Brian and I looking at each other, laughing for the dissonance in our relationship that we go around, but I still have Natasha in my mind loading the dishwasher. So, but there's a lot more to that. But thank you, Emmeline. That was really great. Now we go to our music director, Carole, for our closing hymn, 326, Let All the Beauty We Have Known.
Please join me. Let all the beauty we have known illuminate our hearts and minds, rejoice in others greatly shown, in faith and joy and love that binds. We celebrate with singing hearts the loveliness of sky and earth, the inspiration of the heart, the miracle of every birth. Life's music and its poetry surround and bless us through our days. For these we sing in harmony, together giving thanks and praise.
As I extinguish the chalice, Emmeline is going to read our closing words for us and give us our benediction.
Okay, our closing words are from the book number 610, if you have it with you, called The Journey of Love, from the Pakistani Muslim writer and philosopher Muhammad Iqbal. Where in our hearts is that burning desire? It is true that we are made of dust, and the world is also made of dust, but the dust has motes rising. Whence comes that drive in us? We look to the starry sky and love storms in our hearts. Whence comes that storm? The journey of love is a very long journey, but sometimes with a sigh, you can cross that vast desert. Search and search again without losing hope. You may find sometime a treasure on your way. My heart and eyes are all devoted to the vision. Thank you all.
Now we will join our hearts and we'll stand and form a circle if you're here in the fellowship. And you at home, please sing along, Let There Be Peace on Earth.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. Our Mother, we are family. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace, eternal peace. Let there be peace on earth. Let it begin with me. Have a lovely day, everybody.